very much. Thanks. I'm Rick Steves, and thank you for coming to this talk. I'd like to share with you my favorite, about an hour or so, of information on Spain. And I want to welcome everybody who's here in person, and also welcome all of the people who are viewing on the streaming presentation of this talk. This is our spring festival, and we've got lots of great classes going on, and it's just fun to be able to spend 4 months a year traveling, make a lot of mistakes, take a lot of notes, come home and share our favorite discoveries. So we'll get right into Spain here. You've got the handout that lists all the places we're talking about. And I do want to remind you, when you're thinking about Spain, we are thinking about a country that is vast and a country that is diverse. I want to give you just a quick kind of geographic rundown before we get into some specifics on how to travel in Spain. And then I want to talk about the highlights from a sightseeing point of view. But when we look at the map of Spain, of course, Spain is cut off from Europe by the Pyrenees Mountains. And that way it kind of blocks it from a lot of history in a lot of ways. I got a degree in European history, but in so many cases it doesn't go over the Pyrenees Mountains. The Pyrenees are a wonderful place to travel these days. And you've got on one end Basque country, right where Spain hits France, is the region where people speak Basque. It's an ethnic region, very proud and quite autonomous. And on the other end, where the Pyrenees Mountains hit the Mediterranean, you've got Catalonia, and this is an industrial powerhouse in Spain. And these days, as Europe is uniting, the regions have more flexibility and freedom to wave their flags. And Catalonian, we're going to learn in this talk, has been booming as a culture and as a language. And of course, the powerhouse over there is Barcelona. In the center of Spain, we have Madrid, 1 hour north of Toledo, which is the historic capital of Spain. And nearby are a number of good side trips, including Segovia and Salamanca. Traveling about 6 hours or 4 hours, depending on the speed of your train south, you come to Andalusia. And that is our quintessential image of Spain, I think. And Andalusia has 3 great cities: Cordoba, Granada, Sevilla. We'll see all of that. It's got the most touristy coast in that corner of the world, the Costa del Sol. We'll check that out. And from Gibraltar, on the very south tip of Spain, you can take a boat ride for an hour and go to Morocco. So you can see there's a lot of variety in Spain. We've got some mountains down here with some sort of atmospheric and picturesque hill towns, whitewashed hill towns. We'll check that out. And then in the far northwest of Spain, just across the water from Ireland, is a Celtic region called Galicia. That's the destination of the Camino de Santiago. The capital there is Santiago de Compostela. And we'll check that out with the pilgrims as they arrive on their trek that goes all the way from the Pyrenees Mountains to that northwest corner of Spain. One of the longest stable borders in all of Europe is the border between Spain and Portugal. And these are distinct countries. The Portuguese are proud of their culture, and it is sort of a dead end in a lot of ways geographically, and a lot of people don't get past Madrid. But if you get as far as Spain, remember, you're very close to Portugal. I was just over in Sevilla and Andalusia, and rented a car in Sevilla and just drove for an hour, and I was in Portugal. And it's a huge opportunity to enjoy some variety, to enjoy a much less crowded beach resort, and so on. So when you think about Spain, also think about Portugal. So on this talk, I believe we're going to start in Barcelona, and then we're going to head over to the center around Madrid, and then scoot on down to the south, a little side trip into Morocco, and then we'll finish off in the north in Basque Country and in Galicia. We think of Spain as a place of fun in the sun and the beach, and that's what most Europeans do. Many Europeans head all the way down to Spain looking not for a change in culture, but for a change in weather. And that is one dimension of Spain, but I don't go to Spain for fun in the sun. I go to Spain for the culture and for the history and for the people and for the food. When you think about the story of Spain, it's many levels. It goes back, obviously, even before Roman times. But from a sightseeing point of view, there's plenty of Roman sites in Spain. And time again, you're going to see buildings that were Roman, built on a foundation of Roman ruins. And then you had the Moorish, and then you've got the Christian conquistadors and the modern world. There's all of these levels. This is in Segovia, where you've got a Roman aqueduct brought into the people of Segovia 2,000 years ago by conquering Romans. Of course, when you're going to Spain, you're always going to be hearing about the Moors. The Moors swept in from Africa. Muhammad came in the 7th century, established Islam, and that religion spread like wildfire across the map. And today, every 5 times a day, there's a global wave of praise with the call of prayer going all the way from Malaysia to Morocco. And in 7/11, the Moors. The Muslim Moors swept in from Africa into Spain, and they conquered Spain, and they even moved well into France. For the next many centuries, Europe was united in trying to push the Moors back out. That was called the Reconquista. The Moors, being the enemies of the Christians, don't get a very good shake from our point of view, but when you look at the Moors in an unbiased kind of way, it was a very elegant society, highly cultured. In a lot of ways, the greatness of ancient Europe was lost to Europe in the Dark Ages, absorbed into Islam, and given back to Spain and Europe through the Moors when they came in, and you will find lots of incredible Moorish accomplishments and examples of their culture when you go to especially southern Spain. We'll be talking about the Moorish time and that distinct Muslim style of aesthetics. Now, a big part of Spanish history is pushing the Moors back out, the Reconquista. You can imagine how Europe was all excited about that. And when you see a place called De la Frontera, and there's a lot of towns called so-and-so De la Frontera, Arcos de la Frontera, Fajir de la Frontera, and so on. That is a town that was on the frontier. They pushed the Moors out, they planted the flag. This is Christian now, and it's on the frontier, assuming that this is the frontier of the Muslim Moors south. And then pretty soon, De la Frontera was embedded in reconquered Spain, and it's no longer on the frontier, but it still has that name. Great castles built during that period. When Spain was united and back Christian again, and Isabel and Ferdinand married their kingdoms together, you've got Spain being the sort of celebrator and defender of the Catholic faith, the richest and most powerful country in Europe, in part because of all the discoverers and all the gold and riches they brought in. And the El Escorial was the sort of symbolic headquarters of the Inquisition. And this was counter-Reformation in the 15 and 1600s. And when you travel, you'll see a lot of that counter-Reformation, stern, proud, political Catholicism in Europe coming out of the Spanish royalty. And remember, the biggest war in Europe in the 1600s was the 100 Years' War. I think it finished in 1648, after the Reformation. Martin Luther, 1517, all sorts of chaos after that because Catholic no longer was universal. Spain being the self-appointed defender of the Catholic Church, loved nothing more than to go up to Germany and tromp on Protestants. They had the money, they had the wherewithal, they had the political and economic reason to defend the faith, I suppose, to defend the Catholic notion of Christianity. And it was considered by a lot of people the First World War. Almost all the nations in Europe were involved, and Spain was certainly a big player in that. Not fought on Spanish soil as much, but Spain's interest in the rest of Europe, back when a few families really ran the whole show, and one of the biggest was the royalty in Spain. Lots of money, lots of power, lots of passion, lots of creative people, lots of competition. That means lots of great art. And Spain really is underappreciated when it comes to art. And when you go to Spain, I challenge you to think of it with the same enthusiasm and gusto you would think of Italy. We all love Caravaggio and Botticelli and Raphael. Find the Caravaggios and Botticellis of Spain in your travels, and it'll behoove you. You've got Velázquez, you've got Goya, you've got El Greco, much, much more worth checking out. And you've got the sugary, over-the-top Catholic propaganda artists like Murillo, painting all sorts of Madonnas and children and sculpting Madonnas and children. And there today you've got the galleries filled with great art, and you've also got festivals. Every time I go to Spain, there's festivals bursting out all over the place. When I'm filming in Spain, we're trying to focus on filming a dinner. Suddenly there's a big parade outside, and I just wish I had 3 cameramen, you know? There's things happening all around you. When you get into town, make it standard operating procedure to ask, what's going on tonight? Is there anything happening? There's all sorts of festivals. They feel impromptu, but they're part of this whole beautiful culture, this vibrant culture in the streets that you find in Spain. Springtime especially, around Easter and April Fair, all over southern Spain, you've got great stuff going on. The Catholic Church is very strong in Spain, and a lot of your sightseeing will involve abbeys and monasteries and convents and beautiful sweets cooked by nuns that have lots of egg yolks left over because they starch the sheets with egg whites. Tour guide tips. You learn about that when you travel in Spain. Now, Spain had a very difficult 20th century with their civil war, and it was a decade before World War II. And it was a horrific thing, and today there's a lot of scars left over from that Civil War. Every country has baggage. Spain has Civil War baggage, Franco baggage. And when you travel through Spain, you'll see lots of remnants of that. And the more you know about Franco and the Civil War, the more you'll be able to clue into this stuff, which is sometimes a little bit subtle, but it behooves you to know that. If you go to a Subway sandwich shop in Madrid, or the Spanish equivalent, you're likely to find 4 languages on the menu, and they're all Spanish languages. This wouldn't have happened a generation ago. But now, as Europe is uniting, there's a celebration of regions and ethnic diversity. And when you go, this is an ATM machine, for instance, in Barcelona, and the top button would be Catalan for the people of Catalonia. Opposite that is Espanol for most Spanish people. The next button on the left is Gallego for the Celtic people in northwestern Spain. And then opposite that is Euskara for the Basque people, all right? So it's important to remember they've got 4 real languages, not museum languages, real languages being spoken in Spain today. One of the great ways to enjoy just the energy of Spain is to be out during the paseo. All across the Mediterranean, this is a very important tip, and you need to take a siesta in the afternoon if you have to, like the locals. And in the evening, when the sun goes down, people have made their money, everybody's together. It's a multi-generational festival. It's out in the streets, strolling, be there. A standard operating procedure when you check into the hotel, ask, where do people paseo? Get it written on the map. And they'll circle where the people all stroll. And then you go, and the fun thing is, all the different generations are out. It's in Salamanca, for instance, the main square, my favorite square in all of Spain. It's a big Plaza Mayor. That's what they all have, is this big square, main central meeting place for the community. The men circulate clockwise. The women circulate counterclockwise. Everybody's checking out everybody. The old ladies who don't walk so well anymore are there. They're up in the windows looking down, disgusted at how trashy the young girls are dressing this year. It is a beautiful, beautiful thing. And you need to be out there strolling with people and picking things up. Have this sense of, I got to do it like the local people are doing. You know, dress like the locals if you can. Eat when the locals eat. Drink what they drink. You go to, and a lot of times it's a movable feast. They're going tapas hunting, you know. You go from bar to bar, eating ugly things on toothpicks and washing it down with local wine. I just love this scene. And it's not a museum. You don't need a reservation. You don't need to speak the language. You just got to be out there, rubbing shoulders with the locals as they make the scene, cruising without cars every late afternoon and early evening with the passeggiata. If you just want to sit and make it a spectator sport, you certainly can. I've been saying this all my life, and it's one of my favorite things to do is just sit on the bench with the old guys and watch the world flow by. Now, you've heard of the crisis, and of course, Spain is one of the 4 countries most heavily mired in debt. Portugal, Spain, Ireland, and Greece. And they're in for serious trouble, but that means serious trouble if you're hoping on a retirement and you're a worker in Spain, or serious trouble if you run a construction business in Spain. But as a tourist in Spain, I'll tell you, you're going to be out on the streets in the evening and you're wondering, what crisis? I've been there each year for the last several years, and it's hard to find a place in the restaurants. So the tourism is a little bit free of that. It's got a parallel kind of economy, and there's a lot of people going into Spain, and people are out, they're about, they're eating. You will not feel the crisis as a traveler except for related strikes and marches. And there's a lot of marches, and there's a lot of strikes, and that's just part of European democracy. It's not a big deal. It's kind of fun. It's reality. You know, a lot of American travelers just can't handle reality. You know, and there's a place for them. That's what Orlando is for. You can go to Orlando. There's no strikes at Orlando. Everybody's happy. But I think it's really important that we go to Spain and remember, when you see demonstrations on the news, they're designed to boost viewership and so on. I mean, they're just doing what they can to get on TV, and the cameras are zooming right in, so it looks really exciting. Don't overreact to this stuff. Don't be risky. I mean, if there's something falling apart, you don't want to go there. But generally, you're going to see demonstrations in Spain from now on out, and there's still tens of millions of people living there, having fun there, eating and drinking and dancing and doing all the festivals just like they always have. I will tell you, though, that when times are tough, the thieves get more aggressive. And when times are really tough in the old days, they would break your window at a stop sign and grab your purse in the back seat. That really doesn't happen anymore. But I remember it was really tough in Spain. couple of decades ago. But still, if you're a tourist, you are targeted by thieves. It's just common sense for a thief in Spain to target American tourists. Not because they're mean, but because they're smart. It just makes sense. We've got all the good stuff in our purses and wallets. Don't be vulnerable. You're going to see roving bands of, a lot of times, families, a lot of children who are trained to do this. They're not going to mug you or knife you. They're just going to get you if you're sloppy. Wear your money belt, button it in, leave it at your hotel. Don't be paranoid, just don't be sloppy. I got so many friends who have gotten sloppy and lazy and been ripped off in the predictable places around Spain. The Ramblas in Barcelona, the Plaza Mayor in Madrid. Anytime there's a commotion, assume it's a fake commotion. If an old lady falls down an escalator in the subway system, step back. It's probably a fake commotion. There's thieves at work. If there's a pushing match on the main square, you know, it's exciting to get in there and see what's going on. There's pockets being picked. Shell game, people crowd around, pockets being picked. So just don't be green about that. You are targeted because you're a tourist. If there's 2 thieves in town, you're going to meet them. If you know what's going on, it's not a problem. Spain has a great abundance of hotels, different kinds of hotels. I've got friends who run these hotels. I've been going to these places for 30 years. I've even got a room named after me in one place. The Rick Steves Periodista Turístico, the grand touristic journalist, okay? And there's my own room. Spanish people seem to be very officious, and they have a 2-bit celebrity in town. They'll have, the mayor will be there to welcome you. And I've got, this is my room right here. It's in Arcos. It used to have a footboard on the bed. One of my pet peeves is footboards. I'm 6'2", and the bed can be great, but if it's 6'1", I'm not happy. So I went back and I said, if you're going to name this room Rick Steves, it cannot have a footboard, okay? So now it doesn't have a footboard. But when you go around Spain, you'll find a lot of funky, simple rooms like this, a lot of times with a view of the sea, and half the price you'd find in other places in Europe. I love the funky little family-run hotels in Spain. There's a lot of institutional kind of very efficient and very artistic and stylish youth hostels and guest houses and private homes. And as a good budget traveler, you should find out about these. There's Airbnb, there's couch surfing, there's all sorts of grades of kind of hotels, and then you get into the fancy government-endorsed sort of historic inns, the Posadas and Paradors of Spain and Portugal, which you pay extra, but you're staying in a historic place with really over-the-top service and a stuffy clientele. There's all these different things that you can choose from in your travels. Do remember that the cities of Spain are quite congested with traffic, and they've got clear signs in Spanish that say, if you go past this line, you're going to get a $100 ticket, all right? And don't drive into town when you see, attention, there's a camera, because that probably means you can't go in here unless you're a bus or a taxi or have a reservation at a hotel. Now, if you have a reservation at your hotel, call your hotel or email and confirm the ritual here to get to your hotel with your car, even in the old town. I'm thinking of my favorite hotel, for instance, in Granada. They're well within that no traffic zone where only taxis and local residents and service vehicles can go. If you have a genuine reservation at a hotel, you're legit down there. But you've got to drive to the hotel, and then they have 24 hours to fill out the bookwork and report you to the police so you won't get a ticket. It's routine, it's a little bit nerve-wracking from a tourist point of view, but they do it all the time. So recognize that and be up to date on the downtown driving restrictions, because they can be frustrating and expensive. You don't get the ticket on the spot, they mail it to you. You may think, well, how do they know who I am? You rented a car. They know everything about you. And the car company's not going to pay your ticket. They've got your credit card, all right? So it's an interesting situation. When it comes to eating, I show this photograph because this is a restaurant at 7:30 when you might want to go to eat dinner. And if I'm researching my guidebook and I go to all my favorite restaurants at 7:30, the staff is eating and it's like this, and I feel like a fool. Don't try to eat lunch at noon or dinner at 7:30 or 8. Lunch is 2, dinner is 10. Okay? And when you know that, you're going to be okay. Or what I really like about eating in Spain is tapas. Because frankly, I don't want to eat at 10 o'clock. I'm going to be up in the morning and sightseeing and everything. I want a characteristic meal. I want local cuisine. And what I do is I eat in bars and I eat tapas. This is a whole different universe from restaurants. The food's just as good. It's just as legit. You can sit down. You can have a menu and everything. But it is tapas. and they're open all day long. You can eat at 5 o'clock and have the same service, and you don't feel awkward. Now, tapa skills are really important. And I should mention, everything I'm talking about today is in my Spain book. It's really important to recognize, obviously in this little 1-hour class, I don't have time to get into all the specifics. If you have my Spain book, this will give you 5 pages of phrases and skills just for eating in tapas. It'll give you all the specifics on the different kind of hotels I was talking about and the deal about driving into town, and all the specifics are in this year's edition of Rick Steves' Spain. A tip. Any Spaniard knows a good bar gives a tapa like this for free when you buy a glass of wine. Now the tourist is going to say, I'll have a glass of wine, and I'll have some patatas bravas and some peppers and a little bit of that calamari. Well, then you're not going to get anything free. The Spaniard will say, I'll have a glass of wine, with an expectation of a free plate of food. After the free plate of food comes, then you say, and can I see the menu to order some more food? Do you follow me there? This, for a lot of people, is like a light meal. And the glass of wine costs $2. That's budget travel. Know your vocabulary so you get a good glass of wine. Life is too short to have a $1 glass of wine in Spain. I want to splash out for a $2, or if I'm in a good mood, even a $3 glass of wine. You just need to know a few words. Crianza. Vino tinto is gonna get you table wine. It's the cheapest thing. It's cheaper than bottled water, really. You want to know how to get a good wine, and if nothing else, just ask for the more expensive one. It's for locals, and they'll pay triple for good reason. The tapa scene is wonderful, and for me, it's endlessly entertaining, and I love to eat, and it's so Spanish. You're surrounded by people. Now, when you're talking about tapas, they don't make a lot of money on tapas. They're little $2 or $3 tiny plates. They'd rather sell you a ración or a portion or a half a ración. These are big plates of the tapa stuff designed for a small group. If you don't know your language skills and you ask for jamón, you're going to get a plate of jamón instead of a tapa of jamón. So you got to know how to ask for it. You can look at the menu. Raciones means big tapas. Bocadillos is another thing you see a lot. That is sandwiches. And bocadillos is everywhere. So know what your options are. When you go to a restaurant, you will generally have your sit outside, sit at the bar, sit at the terrace. You'll have the tapas, you'll have the raciones, you have the half raciones. You've got all these different opportunities. It's all there, and it's just fun to be able to master that. I like it because a lot of times they'll say right there, what are your prices? And these would be little, generally open-faced sandwiches and little plates of goodies, and they're just a couple of euros each. So it can be a real fun way to have an adventure. I like to know what my favorite tapas are and just make that be my standard. Pimiento de Padron is beautiful peppers, beautifully cooked up, and you can have them here, but there's nothing like having them over there. And they're sort of like peppers roulette. One of them is very, very hot. And the Spaniards just love this. But I just love to have a drink and a plate of peppers roulette, and it just adds a little adventure to my day, okay? But whatever you know that you like. Remember also, Spain celebrates its many different regions. And if you know a little bit about Asturias and Navarre and Catalonia and Basque Country and Galicia and Andalusia, you can go to a bar and say, that's clearly this or that region. You know, if they pour the wine in a theatrical way that falls down into a copper or in a pottery cup, you know, that would be from one part of Spain. If they've got toothpicks and they just add up the toothpicks on the plate at the end of the meal, that's from another part of Spain. And after a while, you get the hang of that. But each bar has its characteristic, and you need to bully up to the counter and assert yourself, because tourists will be shoved into the eddies and never get anywhere. And it's just not a rude thing, it's just the cultural thing. You got to hold your spot at the table, reach in there and say, pardon, and point and be aggressive, or you'll never be served. It's not bad service, it's just you don't speak the language, so you're at a disadvantage, and you got to muscle in there and get that. I like the kind of bars that have all of the toothpicks, because you can just add it up, and they come back whenever something is newly cooked, they prance out with this new plate of stuff, and you just have to go, yes. And then yes, and then when it's all, you don't worry about the money. They don't worry about the money. And at the end, you got 8 toothpicks, so you owe them 16 euros or whatever, you know. So find out what the toothpick costs, and it's just a fun situation. I think that's Basque. If it's got toothpick situation, it's a Basque bar, and Basque is famous for its gastronomic tapas. So imagine, you're just here hanging out with people, talking to the baristas there, and you got all these different open-faced sandwiches and little tapas, and they all cost the same. That's fun dinner for me. Very fun, yeah. And I've got great guides that have helped me, and on our tours, we've got these wonderful Spanish guides, and they're just all into food. With my guidebook, you will have what you need, so you can eat your way through Spain very well. And I do want to stress that things have gone gastro now. There's very high-end gourmet bars that serve gourmet tapas. Don't always just go for what's on the table. You'll see on the chalkboard stuff that they would like to cook. And they cook it in 5 minutes, and it's there, and it can be a gorgeous meal in bar food kind of price. All over Spain, you've got simple, industrial-strength cafeterias where you can sit down and have your basic meal. And remember, you got super cheap sandwiches to go and so on. That's cheap. It's just amazing compared to the rest of Europe how cheap it can be to travel in Spain. I do want to remind you that jamón is the national food, and you can get a cheap plate of ham, or you can pay triple for the jamón ibérico. I generally don't go top end on menu things, but when it comes to ham, order less and get the very best, at least to experience what good jamón is all about, okay? Because it seems counterintuitive. Why would you pay $10 for a plate of ham when you can get it for $3? Well, because it's 5 times as good, the $10 plate. So give it a whirl, for sure. And your dessert traditionally would be churros, or not dessert, but your late night snack, or your breakfast, greasy donuts dipped in pudding-like chocolate. Churros con chocolate. I just love that. Spain is getting hot. They've moved the bullfight hours later into the evening because it's too hot to sit in the stands in the late afternoon, and they've put canvases over the streets in southern Spain to protect people from the heat. It is brutal in the summer, and you might want to seriously consider traveling in shoulder season if you can, and most hotels will have air conditioning these days, but it's quite hot in Spain. Also remember, you've got discount airlines letting you fly from Galicia to Barcelona for $100, from Barcelona down to Malaga for $100. And you can go cheaper yet if you play the game, but I just go for the standard. Well, I just, find the reasonable fare, but it's just so fast and convenient and safe to fly within Spain. Spain also has its AVE train system, which is one of the bullet trains of Europe. It's like 3 hours now to go from Madrid down to Sevilla, and you can stop in Cordoba on the way. That used to be an 8-hour trip. So you've got these super fast trains. It comes with security. Spain had it's got its own 9/11. They had that horrible bomb in their train system or in their subway system in Madrid. Consequently, today you've got a lot of security. And get used to putting your bag through an X-ray machine to get onto an airplane, and be thankful for that. There's a lot of soft targets, and Spain does a very good job of its security. Driving around the countryside of Spain can be a delight. I've never been impressed by it being a lot of traffic. I find wide open roads and beautiful vistas. And remember, Spain a few decades ago, had no freeways at all. Today it is laced by super freeways. It's part of the EU. When you're in the EU, you're either a net receiver or a net giver. Spain would be a net receiver. They give in less than they get out. They get a lot of money from the EU to build their road system so they can be part of that big 400 million person free trade zone and work with France and Germany. The good news about that is you can drive around Spain quite well these days on the new freeways. Also remember, it's hot. It can be overwhelming. You've got too much to see with too little time. And there's even 3 or 4 of you in your group. Taxis are a good value. Hop in a taxi. If there's 4 of you especially, you should go almost everywhere by taxi. It's the same cost as a bus. 4 bus tickets, 1 taxi ride. So, and your time's worth a lot. So we always think taxis are for people who have lots of money. I think your time is a precious resource. So you'll find taxis, and in Spain, a lot of times it's hard to flag them down. You go to the taxi stand. It varies from town to town, but either go with a taxi stand or flag them down, but use those taxis as well as public transportation. Also, getting in from airports is quite easy. Every airport that I've been to in Spain has a convenient bus shuttle into the town center. I'll be flying into Barcelona in a few weeks, and I'm not even going to take the taxi, even if I had all the money in the world. I'm not going to take the taxi. 4 times an hour for $3. You got this bus that takes you right to Plaza Catalunya, and most of your hotels are within a couple of blocks of Plaza Catalunya. So that's the quick, cheap way to get downtown. We have a very, very popular tour program with 35 different itineraries, all of Europe, and our Spain itinerary is one of the most popular, and basically this is what we think is the best 2 weeks in Spain. And I'm going to take you on this tour right now in the next 15 or 20 minutes. You fly into Barcelona, and then you take the train, or you fly to Madrid. From Madrid, you can side trip to Segovia, and then go down to Toledo. By the way, the little numbers are how many nights I would spend in each spot. From Madrid and Toledo, you head down into Andalusia, and Granada for the Alhambra, and then over to the Costa del Sol and stop in Ronda, the best of the hill towns, and Arcos, a beautiful hill town, and you finish with the real cultural capital of southern Spain, Sevilla, and fly home from there. Or you could take the AVE train in 3 hours back up to Madrid. But that's how I would spend 2 weeks in Spain. Of course, you could spend lots more time, but we've got limited time. We Americans have the shortest vacations in the rich world. Okay, I'm going to whip through a bunch of sites now, and we're going to start in Barcelona. And I spent a lot of time just in general travel skills because I think in Spain it's important to have these cultural skills because if you know how to order tapas, if you know how to use the public transportation, if you know what your hotel options are, Spain is one place where those kind of skills really, really do make a huge difference. Okay. Barcelona is an industrial and economic powerhouse. It's the cultural capital of Catalunya, a proud region kind of halfway between Spanish and French. They were kept down during Franco's time, but now the people in Catalonia can speak their language first. Their kids speak Catalonian at home, and they learn Spanish at school as a second language. Okay? It's an exciting time in Catalonia, and while you're there, of course, they'll speak English or Spanish, but it behooves you to learn a few words in Catalonian. It just endears you to the locals, if nothing else. Visca Catalunya. It's like Viva España. Visca Catalunya. Now, Barcelona, like many cities, has an old town. You can see in the middle here this jumble of streets. When you look at the map, the jumble of streets is the medieval town, and then you'll see a circular boulevard. There's always a circular boulevard circling the jumble of streets. That was the medieval wall. And of course, in modern times, the jumble of streets stays the same, so you have the congested, labyrinthine old town. You've got what was the circular wall, now torn down, providing a grand boulevard that circles the city. And then beyond that, you've got the modern grid-planned town. That's how cities are all over Europe. And the grid-planned town up here is called Eixample, which means the extension. So you had the old medieval Gothic quarter, and then you've got the extension. You want to decide where you want to kind of hang out. The extension is elegant and broad and wonderful pedestrian boulevards. The Gothic quarter is characteristic and full of beautiful little shops and wonderful adventures. And the Ramblas is one of the great boulevards of all of Europe. The Ramblas goes from the center, Plaza de Catalunya. That's the sort of the Times Square of the Catalonian people, really, and it goes all the way down to the harbor. And that's what you would stroll. That's a pedestrian street, the Ramblas, with the great market halfway down. The salty old harbor has been all fixed up after they had a grand exposition and I think a World's Fair there, and now they've got what used to be an industrial wasteland is a whole series of elegant, trendy bars and beaches and fun zones that you can get on a bike and enjoy. In fact, biking around Barcelona is more and more popular than ever before. This is the Ramblas of the Sea. That grand boulevard I mentioned goes down to the harbor, and then it actually continues out into the sea with lots of trendy little shops and restaurants. And this is that strand where you've got fancy places to live, fancy places to eat and drink and play and enjoy wonderful beaches. Wonderful beaches, by the way, in Barcelona. Barcelona is one of 3 or 4 ports in the Mediterranean where cruises start or finish. It's interesting, you could have the greatest cruise port in the Mediterranean, but it might not have the capacity to handle 3,000 tourists coming and going in a embarkation kind of way. Barcelona, maybe the biggest, and that's where I started my cruise. And Barcelona's port is just a 5-minute taxi ride from the old town, and it is very handy to the old town. If you are taking a cruise, Give yourself a few extra days before or after in Barcelona. It's one of the great cities in Europe, and you'll really appreciate to have that extra time. By the way, we wrote a new book. One of our most popular new books is the Rick Steves Mediterranean Cruise Ports Guidebook, and it just retools all the existing chapters we had for all those great cities from the country books, puts them together in a way that spans the Mediterranean, ideal for cruisers that just have one day in Barcelona and then one day in the French Riviera, and then one day in Rome and one day in Dubrovnik, and so on. Now, in the old Gothic quarter, the centerpiece is the cathedral. And the cathedral is very historic. And in front of the cathedral, after Mass, it's something you want to check out. It's the precious, patriotic, national sardana dance. And the traditional old-timers especially get together, and there's a beautiful kind of slow-moving circle dance with music and a lot of people gathering around. And it's just a celebration of Catalonian culture with live music. It's free. It's after Mass on Sunday. Don't miss that while you're in Barcelona. I mentioned the Ramblas, but there's a number of wonderful shopping boulevards all through Barcelona, old Barcelona, where you can stroll and be out with the people. As you're going down, gently down that great Champs-Élysées of Catalonia, the Ramblas, halfway down is the Boqueria. And the Boqueria is touristy, but just vibrant and lots of fun. In researching my book last time I was there, I found a local-style market just a 15-minute walk away that's more typical of locals, but still, the Boqueria is the place to go. It's your, you know how every town in America has a great sort of farmer's market kind of scene. This is one of the ultimate in Europe. And we've got these characters in the market. This guy's name is Juan, and he's always got a big smile and a couple of thumbs up for you when you drop in. He's in my book with this photograph, so now everybody comes with the book, and he smiles and does his thumb up. So when he sees you, he'll give you a big smile and a thumb up, and it makes a nice photograph. A lot of people. That's what I like about our guidebooks, is we connect people with people. So when you're thinking about Barcelona, remember, you've got that extension, where the broader streets are, designed with broader sidewalks, even with the corners of the buildings cut off so the intersections are octagons instead of squares. So it has more airiness. And you can enjoy that while you're exploring Barcelona. And when you get into the Eixample, you'll find a lot of wavy Art Nouveau kind of buildings. Every country around Europe has its own Art Nouveau. That was the art from, around the turn of the last century, a little more than 100 years old. And Art Nouveau is this wavy, organic kind of answer to the Eiffel Tower art. The industrial age brought along all this straight stuff, and some people wanted to be more curvy and organic. Antonio Gaudí was the leading Art Nouveau guy in Barcelona, in Catalonia, and that style in Catalonia is called Modernisme. You'll find Modernisme, and it is it's these chimneys sort of playing volleyball with the clouds kind of stuff, and they're all open to the public. Casa Mia is one of the most famous. There's a whole string of these called the Rue of Discord, where every rich guy hired a different modernista architect, and enough of this conformity. Everyone's going to be, breaking rules and making a scene. There's a park, it was going to be a planned retirement community, but it became just a park called Park Güell, and it's worth going out there. Wonderful, mosaic kind of art, and then, you got to have a church in the modernist style, and this is the Sagrada Familia by Antonio Gaudí, and this is a work in progress. It's expensive to pay your admission. It'll cost you $15 or $20, but you're contributing to the ongoing construction. In the Middle Ages, people took centuries to build a church. They're taking a century to build this church, and when you get there, it really is one of the outstanding architectural experiences in Europe. If there's any building I want to see finished in Europe, it is the Sagrada Familia by Antonio Gaudí in Barcelona. And you can go in there and see the guys doing the construction. You can see them, through glass windows doing all of their fancy architectural work. And you can go inside now and actually worship. It's consecrated, and they are holding masses there. And it's amazing that it's weather tight, and it's well on the way to becoming finished. And that's the great church architecture of our age, really. And you can see these organic forms that are just so delightful when you look at it as Gaudí did. Outside of Barcelona is a place called Montserrat. That's in literally the serrated mountains. You see the mountains are jagged. We would have the Grand Tetons. They had the serrated mountains, Montserrat. And that's where the soul, the spiritual soul of the Catalonian people resides. Up there's a Black Madonna, and people have been going up there for centuries to celebrate their faith and their Catalonian culture. It was almost outlawed during Franco's time. Today, it's wide open. You can get up there with pilgrims. You can get up there with tourists, and it's a beautiful opportunity. Montserrat. Farther north from Barcelona is Gaudí country, or Salvador Dalí country, and he's the great surrealist, and he's a flamboyant promoter and so on. And you can go in Gaudí country, you can go to his home, Cadaqués, and you can go to the place where his mausoleum is, and his mausoleum is actually turned into a museum filled with his art. You stand on the tomb of Salvador Dalí, surrounded by all of his edgy, politically incorrect, fun art, and it's really quite an interesting experience. This is actually Dalí's home right here. I've been to the homes of lots of dead people over my lifetime, and this is probably the most interesting home I've ever toured. They only let about 10 people go in every 20 minutes because it's small and intimate, but you go in with a guide, you have to make a reservation. If you're interested in Dalí, it is well worth the trouble. Cadaqués, the hometown of Salvador Dalí, celebrates liberty. They've got a double dose of liberty there, and a lot of people just really enjoy Cadaqués. His home is a delight with his what do you call it? His artistic, your partner that is your inspiration. Muse, his muse, Gala, yeah. So Dalí had his muse, and he and Gala had a wonderful, wonderful domestic pad from where they did their creative stuff. Of course, Dalí eventually died, and this is the mausoleum filled with tourists enjoying all of his work. And that's something you wouldn't want to miss also. Here's like the famous furniture set, and when you look at it from the right angle, it's Mae West, okay? Okay, Madrid, the modern capital of Spain, and this is the center of Madrid. This is the Puerta del Sol, and this is looking out the window of my favorite hotel. I really like to stay right on the Puerta del Sol. Look how pedestrian friendly this is. It used to be one big parking lot. Now everything's underground, everything's controlled. They used to all be parking on the sidewalks. Now they have these bollards, these posts that keep the traffic off of the sidewalks. Madrid in Spain has come a long way from the chaos of 20 years ago to where they are today, and this is the center of Madrid. You walk that way for 15 minutes, you get to the second most impressive palace in all of Europe, the Royal Palace. You walk 15 minutes in the other way, and you get to the greatest collection of paintings in all of Europe, the Prado Museum, and all around you, you've got wonderful culture. You go downstairs, and you hop on the metro, and you can go anywhere in town for a small price. So here we have the map. In the center, you've got the Puerta del Sol. 10-minute walk from there is the Plaza Mayor. I mentioned these cities have a square circled with a colonnade. It's sort of like an inside-out Colosseum, and it is the Plaza Mayor. That's the main square, and all of the sites you can walk to in this area, and it's bookended on the left by the Royal Palace, and on the right by the Prado, the great collection of paintings, and as you can see with all the green here, there's lots of parks in the city. Now, when we're looking at Madrid, we're finding it's pedestrian friendly, and as I mentioned, it's important to be out when people are out, brutally hot in the day, be out in the evening strolling around. Remember, in Madrid, like any Spanish city, there's districts that are famous for their tapas. You want to find the right area and then have those the roulette of the hot peppers, okay? With the new, it feels affluent to me. I know Spain's having a tough time, but all of the fancy, trendy restaurants outdoors I find are very, very appealing, and you've got plenty of chances to eat well. You've got lots of traditional bakeries to pop into. Find out from your guidebook, and I cover these a lot in my guidebook, what local pastries you want to eat, and eat them literally hot out of the oven. That's as important as going to the museums. Pop into the bakeries, eat what everybody's crowding up to eat. Use the public transit system. You'll see the security. You can see the security officer there at the door of this subway. They had that bomb, that terrorist attack in their subway system, and there's even a memorial for it in Madrid, and they've very careful not to let that happen again. The grand palace of the Bourbon family, the king of the Spanish Empire, ruled a good part of Europe in his day, and because of the importance, the most powerful man in Europe was the King of Spain for a while. That's why they have so much art there and so many grand buildings. You've got a lot of the best art from the Netherlands, because the Netherlands used to be called the Spanish Netherlands. You go through the palace, you see the elegance of that palace. It's really worth checking out. And then, as I said, on the other side of town, you've got that Prado Museum, and here you've got the masterpieces of Spanish culture, like Velázquez, plus the art that the King of Spain had access to because he was so powerful. If he liked the best paintings from the Netherlands, like the Hieronymus Bosch's great Garden of Delights, he gets it right there in his palace, and now it hangs in the Prado. So you can see all of this great art. You can also see the masterpieces of Goya. I love Goya, the first painter with a social conscience in a lot of ways, and his masterpieces are there in Madrid at the Prado. The most important painting of the 20th century, many would say, is Guernica by Picasso. He painted this after Guernica was bombed by Hitler, who was helping Franco keep people down in this feisty little town in Basque Country, Guernica, and Hitler saw it as a chance to have some aerial bombardment practice leading up to World War II. So Hitler said to Franco, yeah, I can help you out. I got this new idea to drop bombs out of airplanes. What town do you want to try it out on? Guernica would be a good one to shut up. So the German planes came and they just really leveled Guernica. It was a unprecedented kind of slaughter with an aerial bombardment. Everybody was appalled. Picasso dropped what he was doing and he made this grand collage kind of painting in exile. And this was the painting that was featured in a big World's Fair, and it really became the pacifist piece of art of the 20th century. And what it does is it tries to put a human face on what is written off as collateral damage. The Guernica is incredible. And it is in a lot of ways the Spanish national piece of art, and it's in a museum near the Prado called Reina Sofia, which takes the Prado into the modern age, much like the Orsay would take the Louvre into the modern age in Paris. If you like modern art, don't miss Reina Sofia, just a few blocks away from the Prado. Bullfights are a big deal in Spain. If it was just a touristic spectacle, I wouldn't promote it, and I don't even feel like I'm promoting it. I'm just saying what it is, because a lot of people think it's wrong to even talk about it, but it exists. When you go to a good bar in Spain, the bullfight is on TV, just like we've got baseball on TV. And it's just people live for this. When you want to know what's going on with the latest bullfight in Spain, you don't look in the sports section of the newspaper, you look in the culture pages, because a bullfight is considered an art form. So if you want to see a bullfight, they're most Sundays from Easter until September, and the biggest ring and the best matadors are in Madrid. And you go out there, and there's lots of spectacle, and then there's 6 or 7 or 8 bulls, and each bullfight takes 15 or 20 minutes. It's a lot of brutality and killing, and after 4 or 5 bulls, I'm ready to go. I remember leaving after 4 bulls just with a bunch of mothers were leaving with their crying children, and I was going out feeling like about as strong as those kids, you know. And I remember one little kid looked at me and he just went, nasty. You know, it was just nasty stuff. They kill the bulls. It's a thing that's been going on for a long time. But if you want to check it out, it's kind of predictable. The bull always loses. And they drag him out, and they bring on another bull. You need to buy your ticket. And you can there's 2 kinds of bullfights. If you see Novillada, that would be rookie matadors compared to the serious bullfight. And the prices would be about double for the serious bullfight. But for most amateur viewers like us, it's probably not that big a deal. If you don't want to go to a bullfight, if you have a problem promoting it with your patronage and so on, but you're curious, you can go to a bull bar. I list these in my books because there's all these old-timers that are into bullfights just like old-timers here into Babe Ruth. And you go to the bull bar and you got all the trophies all around you, and it says who killed him, how much he weighed, and there's the knife that went into his head to knock him off, and then there's photographs. What's really interesting to me is there's photographs of matadors who did not do very well. And I like these photographs because it just balances it out. But, I mean, there are incredible gorings, and there's always a photographer there to get them. Now, this guy, he really messed up. And he looks like he's toast, but he actually survived. And there's the whole story of this. But maybe it's just like voyeurism, but I really find these bull bars fascinating because you get a close-up photographic look at all of the most spectacular bullfights. You got Robert F. Kennedy and Che Guevara and Castro and Hemingway and Franco in their macho poses with the matadors and everything. And if you want to wrap it up with a little munchie, you can go have bulltail soup, okay? That's a delicacy which I think you only want to eat once. You get on the train, and in about half an hour from Madrid, you get to Toledo. Toledo is the historic, spiritual, and artistic capital of Spain. It would be the modern capital of Spain, except it was built smartly in the Middle Ages in a hairpin turn of the Tagus River. if you're building a capital city, that's perfect because you got a fortification, a moat, and cliffs on 3 sides. You just build one herky wall here with a nice grand gate, and you get yourself a perfectly fortified capital city. That was Toledo until the King of Spain became the most powerful man in all of Europe, and they realized we're not in danger of being invaded in our capital. We don't need to have our city fortified any longer. They moved it 1 hour north to Madrid, where you have a modern capital. But Toledo remains the artistic, spiritual, and artistic capital of Spain, and it's perfectly preserved, and I just love Toledo. It's one of my favorite cities in Spain. The cathedral is massive, but you hardly know it because it is jammed with all the buildings around it with this higgly-piggly medieval street plan. You step into the cathedral, and it's if it was built itself as a museum, it would be among the best in Europe. There's so much great art in the sacristy, including lots of El Grecos in the sacristy of the Toledo Cathedral. You want to treat that cathedral in Toledo like one of the great artistic and cultural sites in Europe, and an opportunity to see El Greco in his hometown. There's lots of El Greco in the Prado. If you like El Greco, he was in a lot of ways, the first modern artist. He has this elongated, dreamy kind of style. And learn about El Greco, because he's a great painter. He's Greek. That's his nickname, the Greek, El Greco. He moved to Venice during the Renaissance in Venice, and he didn't play the rules right there, and he didn't get much work. So he went to the Wild West in Europe, to the court of the king in Spain, and there he got in good with the king, and he performed well, and he became the great painter of the king in Spain, and you see a lot of his work when you travel around Spain. In the other direction from Madrid, about an hour away, is Segovia. Segovia is famous for its castle, its roast suckling pig, and its Roman aqueduct. And I just love this Roman aqueduct. You can climb up to the top of it, or you have in the past anyways, and you can see this huge structure built to bring a little trickle of water into the town using gravity instead of peasants having to carry the water into town. And these aqueducts would go for miles and miles, brought in by the Roman engineers so the cities could have running water. And you can check out the Roman aqueduct when you're in Segovia, a reminder that Spain was part of the Roman Empire and had a lot of stability during the Pax Romana. You can enjoy just the exuberance and the liveliness in the streets when you're in Segovia. It's a small town, cozy alternative to Madrid, and if you're really looking just for a workaday Spanish town, that might give you a nice counter to Madrid. And you've got this famous Segovia castle. I want to remind you, whenever you see anything as pointy as this castle, it is not medieval, it is faux medieval. Rebuilt in modern times or in the 19th century during the Romantic Age, in an over-the-top, ultra-pointy, neo-medieval way. This castle was burned down, and then in the 19th century they rebuilt it, and they just put in all the wild spires and so on to make it look like they thought in a romantic notion of Gothic architecture. And it's a beautiful castle to check out. But I just want to remind you, sometimes not to burst your bubble on that, but sometimes the most pointy medieval stuff is fake medieval from the 19th century. By the way, we've must have made 8 different TV shows in Spain and several shows on Portugal, and they're all available if you'd like to get our DVD, if you want to see them on public television. And in our new website now, we've got all 100 of our TV shows available for viewing at any time on your computer. It's free. You just go to ricksteves.com, and then you check out the TV section, and you type in Spain, and you see 8 shows, and you click, and you're right there. We've also got 8 years of radio interviews. Every week we have a 1-hour show on public radio, and we've taken these. All the archives are available in the radio section on our website, but what's really fun for me as a travel teacher is we've taken 8 years of radio interview shows, we've deconstructed all the shows, and we've collected the interviews in country-specific playlists, and we offer these on my free app, along with guided tours for all the great cities in Europe. So we got 40 or 50 different guided tours, absolutely free, plus all the interviews. It's Rick Steves Audio Europe. You don't need the book. It doesn't cost anything. You can listen to it offline when you're over there. But get this app on your mobile device, and you'll have a lot of information. As in my radio show, I don't need to be the tour guide. I just get to be the curious traveler. And I've got these incredible guests, and I get to pick their brains, and then we design that interview in a beautiful way, making both of us sound brilliant, and we then air it. Okay? So you can get all that information for free. Remember, the TV shows on the website, the radio shows at ricksteves.com, and the app, Rick Steves Audio Europe, free for Android or iPhones at the App Store. When you go to Segovia, be sure you have an appetite, because you're going to want to have some roast suckling pig. Roast suckling pig is little tiny baby pigs that have only been having mother's milk, and that's why they're so tender, and then they kill them, and they cook them, and they feed them to humans, okay? There's roast suckling goats also, and it's a spectacle. It's just a delight for a lot of people. So if you're carnivorous, you don't want to miss that. Salamanca is a great city. It's a university town, and this photograph reminds me that it's kind of like Where's Waldo. Whenever you take a picture with a wide shot in Spain, look around and you'll probably find somebody taking a pee in a corner. Right in the middle, and between those arches. There's a man, and I didn't realize that for years, but then a lot of times in Europe, you just find that somewhere in a low-key area. So be careful. Salamanca has that main square I talked about, the greatest square in Europe, the Plaza Mayor, and that's where my favorite paseo scene is in Europe. And as in any paseo thing, if you'd rather not get the exercise, you can sit down, pay the extra. It's going to cost you 50% more or something like that to eat out on the square instead of at the bar. If you just want to slam down a cup of coffee for $1, go to the bar. If you don't mind spending $3, sit there and enjoy it for a while. There's no hurry. You're paying for the real estate as well as the coffee. Okay, so don't complain about the high price. It's just cost more to use the table and sit there all day, and you're welcome to sit there as long as you want. A great thing about this university town is its tradition of strolling troubadours. I wish we had troubadours in our society. I think they went out back when we were kids, but troubadours in Spain are all over the place. They're called tuna bands, and the tuna bands play for weddings, they play for graduations, and they stroll the streets playing for anybody who will give them a couple euros, and it's just a lot of fun. You'll see that in your travels. As you drive across Spain, you'll see big, huge bulls on the horizon. And they're all over the place. These are actually advertisements for some sherry company, if I understand it correctly. But now they're just kind of icons of Spain. And La Mancha is the windy, vast interior of Spain. And it's got lots of windmills, and it's got lots of castle remnants and reminders of the Reconquista. You know, that central part of Spain is called Castile, isn't it? Castile, that means the land of the castles. And all these castles, most of these castles were built by the Christians coming down and reestablishing their territory as they pushed the Moors ever south. If you ask a European what happened in 1492, they won't think about Columbus sailing the ocean blue. 1492, that was the year we finally kicked the Moors back into Africa, and we recaptured Spain, reconquered Spain, Reconquista. And great city from Reconquista history is Granada, because Granada is the famous last home of the Moors, where they had their last palace, the Alhambra. And people go to Granada today, a small town today, but in its day, it was a very, very important city because this was where the Spaniards and the European Christians defeated the Moors. That was their palace, the Alhambra, and down below you've got sort of an Arabic, Moorish kind of town, and the sprawling modern town. And this is where Isabella and Ferdinand, the Catholic monarchs, the greatest kings and queens of Spain, used as their capital. That's where they're buried. Not because Granada was more important than other cities, but because Granada was symbolically the place where they kicked out the Moors, and they're going to plant their flag there, they're going to bury their kings there, they're going to have their palace there, they're going to inhabit the Moorish palace and turn it into the royal palace. That's what you do when you conquer somebody. You take over their palace and you use it for your troops and your president or your king or whatever. So Isabella gave Columbus the orders to go explore find the new world, or go around the world, or get to the east for the spice trade from here. And this was an embarkation point for a lot of the sailors on the river in southern Spain. It was actually from Sevilla, I believe. And when you go to Granada, you can see the tombs of Ferdinand and Isabella. Ferdinand and Isabella, they married each other in the middle 1400s or 1460s, I think, and that was really marrying together two great kingdoms, and that created essentially what we have today as Spain, okay? And when that happened, Spain really arrived. Ferdinand and Isabella, and they were so passionate about their Catholicism, they're actually nicknamed the Catholic monarchs. It really was an alliance with Rome that way, and you will learn a lot about that when you're traveling in Granada. Looking out from the Alhambra, that Moorish palace, across the canyon, you see the Albayzín, and this is a labyrinthine Moroccan souk kind of marketplace city. You can lose yourself in this area. It's a fascinating place to explore, and it does have that whiff of Arabia there. Also, in the hills nearby are the Gypsy Caves, Sacramante, famous for ripping off tourists. It is, you don't want to go there with any rings on and leave your wallet in the hotel, seriously. But if you want to venture up there, you can go to touristic flamenco shows. And they're going to water down your wine, and they're going to try to overcharge you, but it's
in a way, in a quirky kind of way, it's all in good fun. You know, you're rich and they're poor, and you're going to venture into their territory and let their women dance for you, and they're going to see how much money they can take out of your pocket before you go. So if you want to go there, I don't necessarily promote it, but I go there and I find it very interesting. You got that option. You'll have that little bit of hippies and gypsies coming in from the hills into that Alpecin area. And it has this Moroccan, smoking dope, black feet. They're called the Piedra Negra, the rich kids who went to Granada and they don't wear shoes anymore, so they got black feet. And there's these bohemians and these counterculture types, and it all mixes together in a delightful kind of way. Get a local guided tour. All over Spain, you can get good local guides, and they'll take you around and they'll explain things to you. This is one of my favorite guides in Granada, and she reminded me Granada is the most Muslim city in Spain. And the first mosque to be built since the Reconquista in Spain was right here. And it's built not for Muslims and or Moroccans that came in, but it's for Spaniards who decided to worship as Muslims. 10% of the city or something like that is Muslim. And they have a call to prayer. And the local people said, you can't amplify it because it's annoying. So every day, 5 times, the imam goes to the top of the tower and he hollers out the call to prayer instead of amplifies it. But there's this dynamic in Granada that is worth checking out. At the balcony overlooking the city as the sun goes down on the Alhambra with the gypsy musicians playing and a glass of wine and some nice munchies. It's a beautiful moment. When you're in Granada, get romantic about the viewpoint, about the culture, about the history. Remember, when you go to the Alhambra, you'll need a reservation. There's a number of sites in Spain that require reservations because of their popularity, and Granada's Alhambra is probably the number one frustration that way. When you get your reservation and your guidebooks explain exactly how, you'll know how to get there without waiting in line, and you can enjoy that sumptuous palace that until the 1400s was the last stronghold of the Moors. The garden, called the Generalife, it's spelled like general life, Generalife, is the Moorish idea of what heaven looks like. Lots of lavish gardens and running water and so on. And you can go there and imagine the Moorish sultan or whatever hanging out there. Now, south of Granada, you get to the Costa del Sol. Generally, I do not like the Costa del Sol. As I said earlier, filled with Europeans from the rainy north going down there for a change in climate, but not a change in culture. Consequently, you got a Belgian town with Belgian radio and Belgian newspapers. You got an English, you got an Irish, you got a German town, and they're all on the Costa del Sol with their timeshare condos. And it's just, it is what it is. You can go there, it's kind of quirky. Local people are kind of frustrated because they can go to a restaurant and not find any Spanish on the menus, literally. Now, I've looked in the Costa del Sol from one end to the other, and there's one town I really like, and the town I really like is Nerja. Nerja, and I absolutely love Nerja. It's got a little bit of English expat feeling. It's got wonderful beach. It's not as commercialized as the others. It's got wonderful local style bars. It's easy to get to from Granada. It's got good transportation connections, and this is the balcony of Europe overlooking the Mediterranean coast there. It's a great place, Nerja. And this is the promenade in Nerja and the beach at Nerja. Okay, so we've been from Barcelona, and then we went over to Madrid in the center of Spain. We side-tripped to Toledo and Segovia. Then we headed south to Granada in Andalusia. Now we're on the Costa del Sol, on the Mediterranean coast. We're going to go to the hill towns of Andalusia, and then we're going to finish in Sevilla. Later on, we're going to go north to Basque Country and to Galicia. Sevilla is the capital of Andalusia. To me, it's, along with Barcelona and Madrid, the most important city to see. Sevilla has a huge cathedral and a giant bell tower. And the bell tower of the cathedral used to be the minaret of the Moorish mosque that stood there first. When you go inside the cathedral, you'll find the tomb of Columbus, and you'll find a lot of gold leaf. Remember, Spain really prospered with being able to just harvest the gold from the new land. The irony is Spain had it easy during the Age of Discovery because it just looted all of the stuff from the new land. It didn't need to be on the ball with the coming of the modern economy and industrial age. Consequently, I think because Spain had it so easy during the Age of Discovery, it fell way behind, and it was one of the most poor countries after that. Nevertheless, when you go to cities like Sevilla, you'll find great art and beautiful jewels in the sacristies of the church and lots of histories. This is the minaret of the mosque. When the Christians came in, they decided to tear down the mosque and build a church right on top of the mosque. They kept the minaret and they just put a Christian saint on the top, and it becomes a Christian monument. When you go around, you'll find the Alcazar, the old palace. A lot of that Moorish architecture was embraced by the Christians who conquered the Moors, and you find Christian palaces that have the same kind of Moorish architecture. Gibraltar. And a good example of that is in the Alcazar there in Seville. Seville is famous for its festivals. In the spring, you've got Holy Week, the Semana Santa, leading up to Easter, and Seville does it in the highest, fanciest way. And you've got the Spring Fair, April, May, a big time for 2 week-long festivals in rapid succession. The Spring Fair is all about horses, ladies in polka dot dresses, and sherry wine. And it's just everybody's out partying all over southern Spain during springtime. They each have their different spring fairs. And they have places called casetas. A caseta is a tent where a big family or business hosts a party every night for a week. And it's just, big shots spend the money, and they have the music and the food, and everybody goes there. It's like you go out to the fairgrounds, and it's like 100 wedding parties going on at the same time. All these private little tents, private parties of all these leading families. As a tourist, if you're clever with your social skills, it's very easy to get invited in. Then you got all the drink, all the food, all the drunk locals you could ever want, all right? So it's just an amazing scene, and it's worth checking out if you're there during this period. Any time of year, you can see the latest flamenco skirt or dress fashions in the windows as you do your shopping, and every night there are 4 or 5 different flamenco shows going on in Sevilla, designed for tourists, and all very good, all very good. Be there during Semana Santa, and you'll find the floats that are from inside the churches out on the streets, being carried through the streets. And it's just an amazing sort of religious passion and tradition and festival coming out. This is Concepcion. She's a friend of mine that does tours every day, taking people around in Sevilla, giving cultural insider tours. She can take you into the museums, and you can better understand that Catholic-style art, like the art of Murillo. And remember, in Europe, they have the other side of the river, the wrong side of the river, like we have the wrong side of the tracks. And in Sevilla, you go over the river into the Triana district. That's where you find the crusty locals, the best restaurants, the people just out in the streets, the ladies getting together, and it's just a cool scene. I love Triana when I'm in Sevilla. Cordoba is the 3rd most important of the 3 big cities in southern Spain. It's got a Roman history going way back, and then, of course, it's a home of the Moors, and it's famous for its giant mosque, and inside of the mosque is a huge cathedral. When the Christians came, they kept this big mosque, and they built a church within the middle of it. And it's called the Mezquita, the mosque, and it's well worth checking out. Cordoba is a good example of the flowery, philosophical, poet-filled culture of the Muslims when they came into Spain, and you'll get a big dose of that. And remember, you've got plenty of patios that are people doll up their patios and they open them to the public, and that is worth checking out. Southern Spain is called the route of the Pueblos Blancos, all sorts of beautiful whitewashed towns. My favorite would be Arcos de la Frontera. Arcos de la Frontera, it's a bigger town, a good home base, and from there you can tour the other towns. Again, in these towns, people are proud of their balconies, their little courtyards, and they open them up to the public, and they leave their doors open, or the gates are there and you can look in, and that's something that's fun to check out. Ronda, maybe the most famous of these whitewashed hill towns, is built straddling a gorge. In more modern times, they built a bridge across that gorge, and today you can visit the new town and the old town. Ronda is famous for its bull ring, the oldest bull ring in Spain. There's a wonderful museum there, and you can go into the arena and just learn a lot about it while you're there. Gibraltar is an odd thing. It's a little hunk of Britain right down there in the south. Strategic point, this rock facing a rock on the other side in Africa called the Pillars of Hercules or something like that. And today you can go into Gibraltar if you like. There you got it right there, the rock. It's honeycombed with tunnels because it was of military importance. It's been reclaimed. There's twice as much land now as there was in the old days. When you get there, you park in Spain, and then you walk across an airstrip, very carefully looking both ways to get into the country. And then you've got the British town. It's a military town that's been decommissioned. It's a tacky British tourist beach resort town. It's sort of low-end English holiday going. And I find it's kind of quirky, and it's a fun little break from Spain. If you're interested in old British history, you get a lot of it there as you climb through the tunnels of Gibraltar. And if you want a tour, there's a man named Bland who doesn't have a very good marketing sense compared to his ego, and his company is called Bland Tours. And you'll find lots of Bland tour buses there to show you around Gibraltar, and it's actually more interesting than it sounds. They do this circular tour, and they go up onto the top of the rock where you can meet the famous apes of Gibraltar, and that's a lot of fun. Tarifa is the best town in southern Spain for jumping off over to Morocco. Don't go to Morocco from Algeciras. From Gibraltar, go there from Tarifa. Very important. The boat ride takes about an hour and a half to get there. You get down to Tangier. Tangier used to be the armpit of Africa, now like a sort of a Tijuana of Africa. And like Tijuana, it's getting its act together, and Tangier is now a delightful place to travel. I think one of the most exciting days you can have in Spain is leaving Spain when you're in the south to take that hour-and-a-half ride over to Morocco. You don't need a visa, and it's just a day trip, and you have a chance to wander around Tangier. You can get a good local guide if you like. This is my friend Aziz. He's in my guidebook, and you can get other guides too. And you wander around enjoying the markets and the scene. I'm going to go very fast now, excuse me for my time limit, but we're going to take a quick look at Basque Country and Galicia up in the north of Spain. One of our more popular tours for a sort of a return traveler in Europe is our Basque tour, and it's 2 days in the French part of Basque Country, 3 days in San Sebastian, and 2 days in Bilbao, the big industrial capital, with Guernica nearby. San Sebastian is the best resort. Saint-Jean-de-Luz over here by Bayonne is my favorite town in France. But the point is, this is Basque country. When they drew the line separating the French and the Spanish people, they forgot about the Basques. They have a completely unrelated language, and it is worth checking it out, and it is resurgent now. More people are speaking Basque this generation than last generation. This is the beach in San Sebastian, and people just love this beach, but I go to San Sebastian for the gourmet tapas. When you go to San Sebastian, especially if you hire a local guide, then you'll know exactly what to eat. But you just, every night, you're out there wishing you had a bigger stomach. Now, if you have a tough time with your appetite, you can go to these shops in Spain that sell all the gear for marijuana. We're talking a lot about marijuana policy reform in the United States. In the United States, we are not going the way Spain goes. We're going to tax and regulate and let people sell it in liquor kind of stores. In Spain, they say, we don't want anybody buying or selling marijuana. You can grow it on your own. And there can be shops that give people the seeds and the gear and the fertilizer and the instruction so that you can home grow. And if you don't want to grow it yourself, you can join clubs, and then you can get 3 or 4 plants a year or something like that. But it is interesting when you travel in Spain, you'll find marijuana leaves outside of buildings, and you can step inside and learn a little bit about how Europeans deal with drug policy in a pragmatic harm reduction kind of way. And if you've never really had a chance to talk to somebody about growing marijuana, there's a place there that would be give you an extra dimension to your trip. Also, another part of your experience in Basque Country will be to learn that this is not Spain. When you go to the ATM machine, there might be a sticker up above that says, no, this is not Spain. This is Basque Country. You're going to get, you're going to use Spanish to get this money maybe, but it's a proud independent country. This is where Guernica was. Guernica is kind of a hard-scrabble little town, but it's the historic capital of the Basque people, and a visit to that is quite interesting. Bilbao is famous for its Guggenheim Museum, and it is a wonderful museum. The building itself, I find every bit as interesting as the art inside. It's state-of-the-art, cutting-edge, avant-garde art with a Gehry-designed, modern art gallery building. And the whole city has got modern art. Bilbao is a fun place to check out. One very popular town in the north of Spain on the edge of Basque Country is Pamplona. Pamplona is good any time of year, but it's especially interesting during the Running the Bulls. Each July, they have the Festival of San Fermin, and it lasts for about a week, and every morning around 8 o'clock, the Bulls run. That seems early in the morning, but it's not. It's late at night. People are up all night long, and we were there filming. If you want to see it, you can Google Pamplona Rick Steves, or you can look at our Basque show and see what we filmed. But we had a great time there filming the Running of the Bulls. And, I'm not that into the big, wild, drunken brawl festivals of Europe, but this was really good. I really, really had fun in Pamplona. They know how to do it. And it's night after night, this incredible party. Everybody cleans up. They take away the broken glass. They drag away the injured people. And then they do it again. And I just thought it was fascinating, and it was a lot of fun. There was a very positive vibe, and if you're interested in the Running the Bulls, the only complication for you is finding a room. If you can find a room, you got it made. And it finishes, every bull running finishes with an amazing bullfight down at the arena. Lots of revelers from all over Spain and all over Europe, and they're on their feet for a while, and then they take a little break, and then they're back on their feet again. As you travel out from Basque Country, you'll get into Rioja wine country, and cutting-edge architects like Calatrava have been commissioned to design beautiful centers for wineries showing off their goods in northern Spain. The Camino de Santiago cuts across Spain from the Pyrenees all the way to the northwest corner, Santiago de Compostela. And for 1,000 years, pilgrims have been hiking, many of them from Paris, all the way to here in their religious quest or their personal quest. These days, it's not just Christians, it's people of all walks of life, seekers wanting to get away from all, wanting to recalibrate. It's a beautiful thing. You'll stop at very important cathedral towns along the way. Leon has an amazing cathedral. This is the symbol of the Camino de Santiago. It's the scallop shell, and it starts up in Saint-Jean-Pied-du-Port, up in the French part of the Pyrenees Mountains. That's the kickoff point for a lot of people, and then it's a 30-day walk. Along the way, you follow the scallop shells, and when you go to the Camino de Santiago, it just means the way. You'll find evocative bridges and lots of people with backpacks, and all of them have that scallop shell dangling from their backpack. Beautiful vistas, vast open spaces, cathedrals, spires on the skyline. It's a long hike, and I've never done the hike, but I've spent a lot of time there researching and talking to people. Everybody on that hike is having a life-changing experience. If you ever have 30 days that you want to really invest in your inner well-being, consider seriously this Camino de Santiago. It's dirt cheap because it's just you stay in these refuges for $5 or $10 a night, and everybody eats communally, and it's just a beautiful up-with-life kind of thing. You get stamps on your little Camino passport all the way along, and then you finally get to Santiago de Compostela. This is the cathedral, the culmination of that hike, where for 1,000 years pilgrims have come from Paris all the way to there, and I'd like to be on the square in Santiago de Compostela at 10 o'clock in the morning. It's just that last leg from the last refuge into the finale is just about a 2-hour walk. And they walk in, and these guys are just sunburned and ragged and exhausted, but at the same time exuberant. And when you see them finally reach that square, they put their foot on that scallop shell that's into the pavement, and then they look up at the cathedral, and they're just overwhelmed with joy. And you just have to hug them, just like everybody's hugging everybody. It's just a gorgeous experience as you have that finale of the Camino de Santiago. You meet characters like this, and they just really are beaming, and it's worth checking out. There's so much exciting history and culture that you can experience when you travel in Spain, knowing what you're looking at. In Galicia, it's the Celtic part of Spain. Remember, if you set a boat out north from there, you'd get to Ireland. They're Celtic sisters and brothers. This is a very colorful area. It's got barnacles, percebes, which are one of my favorite munchie treats anywhere in Europe. Barnacles, you'll find them in Portugal and in Spain. They're quite expensive. Order just a little bit, but percebes is the word. Barnacles, they eat it like beer nuts, with their beer. And I just think that's a real treat. And remember, in Galicia, it's that mix of Celtic and Spanish culture. It's kind of where river dance meets flamenco, okay? And I just stumbled into, dance clubs having their practice sessions. Walk in, you're more than welcome, and you get a sense of that proud culture. So once again, Spain has lots to offer. We do a tour which is a My Way tour. It's an unguided tour, which gets a consultant or an escort, the hotels and the bus transportation, but you're on your own, and it's a lot cheaper than the other tours. And this is about 10 days, and that's what we would do. The fully guided tour is about 2 weeks, and that's what we've done. We just did that in this slideshow. And we've also got a little 7-day tour, which is Barcelona and Madrid with a side trip to Toledo. Look at our tour promotional material, even if you're not considering taking our tours, so you can see a well-tested itinerary and know if that would be right for you. Okay? I hope that gives you some good ideas for your Spanish adventures, and thank you very much for joining us today. Happy travels. Thank you very much.